All right, the 49ers. They're sitting there at number 2. Let's pretend, because in our purposes, Kyler Murray off the board, number 1. Whether it is the Arizona Cardinals taking him or someone else traded up to get him. So we're not even going to do Kyler Murray versus Jimmy G versus Nick Mullins versus CJ Beathard. It's not even on the table. So what do the 49ers do with the number 2 overall pick here?
It needs to be talked about here that their biggest issue is coverage. They were absolutely terrible in coverage last year. When opponents targeted wide receivers, they gave up by far the highest EPA per play. A 27-2 touchdown interception ratio, 123 pass rating. It was terrible from a coverage standpoint.
How much is the pass rush's fault there? How much is the fact? So listen, they've drafted all
You haven't let me finish because
Okay.
I asked this question.
Go ahead.
They had a league average pressure rate on those plays and a league average time to pressure rate on those plays. And as we have seen, coverage comes first in that order of variables for predicting winning. We saw it in the Super Bowl once again for the second straight year, right? The Eagles bolstered their coverage, won the Super Bowl. The Patriots turned the
Eagles' coverage fell off the next year, and they were 9-7.
Well, yeah, let's not talk about the quarterback there. But the Patriots really explained how important it is to have coverage and that you can scheme a pass rush. To me, there is no decision here for the Niners unless they just get no offers. They've got to leverage this opportunity to trade down and to pack in some coverage, and you could also get a decent edge rusher.
So here's a question. So if there is no market for the second pick, which I can't imagine, obviously you would just sell it lower than you want, but if there's no market for it, do you take one of those top cornerbacks at 2, knowing that you're probably getting everybody else at 6th? Do you do what the Browns did a season ago and draft Denzel Ward at 4, right? After a year, none of us are really gnashing teeth over the fact that he was the 6th best player on everybody's board, but you got him at 4. It's no, you got a really good cornerstone player of your defense, and pair that with Myles Garrett and having Baker Mayfield. That looks like a pretty good roster moving forward. In the event that the egg timer goes off and you have to take a guy, do you take the Greedy Williamses of the world, the DeAndre Baker? Do you take that player at that pick?
Well, this is the debate I keep having, because I think we've done a really good job of figuring out which parts of our data do translate from college to the NFL. And when we look at that, pass rusher is probably the best thing that we do as far as just confidence level, right?
Yep.
Nick Bosa, feel very confident that he's going to be a top-notch rusher at the NFL level based off all of his college data.
Yep.
Matches up with a Joey Bosa, his brother, and with a Myles Garrett. So if I'm is that the safest play, right? Because I feel like I know what I'm getting, right? Versus corner, the upside's higher, right? The potential output and value is so much higher, but it's also one of the harder things to project. We also, just from our evaluation standpoint, we have Greedy Williams and Byron Murphy and DeAndre Baker, different styled corners, all kind of lumped together. So how do you balance that? Because with the number 2 overall pick, I really don't want to miss on a player, but at the same time, I would love to hit a home run. So how do you balance that?
Right. I mean, I think the answer is you look at the Niners' history of drafting, right? DeForest Buckner is a terrific football player. I mean, no one's gonna sit here and say he wasn't a good pick at that spot. No one's gonna sit here and say they didn't know what they were getting there. All those things, and yet the 49ers' ability to defend other offenses is relatively insensitive to how good he's been. Right, so I agree that you sort of know what you're getting when you get a superior edge player. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to move the needle all that much. If you're a defense that's going to crash and burn anyway, right, you might as well have the other side of the coin being, I get a guy who's a complete shutdown guy. That makes Richard Sherman my second corner. That helps out everybody.
If I knew I was getting that's fine.
Sure.
I'm asking about the risk value.
But you sort of know that you're never going to get that kind of impact from Nick Bosa. You know that conditional on having a great defense already, he's going to add an extra pass rush that's going to make you elite. But conditional on not being able to cover anybody, his output is going to make your defense marginally better, in my opinion.
I mean, it's simple, right? From every study that we've done, coverage is just simply a stronger predictor of winning games. And all I think you need to do is look at some of the recent history, right? When you want to win a Super Bowl, you're going to have to go through a Tom Brady. You're going to have to go through a Russell Wilson. You're going to have to go through guys that are able to mitigate the pass rush by doing things either with timing or with their athleticism, that a strong coverage game is going to force them into more sacks than, honestly, Nick Bosa being that good from his edge position. And then on top of that, the stability thing, yeah, I know that you don't want to strike out, but you also have to look at it from a need perspective. You have to play far more cover guys than edge defenders. So while it is more volatile, you simply have to put them out on the field. And so you need to take swings at those positions in order to be successful, in order to compete for a Super Bowl.
I mean, Kansas City had the most sacks in the NFL.
Changing my draft philosophy is draft the best players at positions of value, but draft the best players.
But we're talking about a situation where you can't trade down from number 2. Yeah. In this situation, I would be stunned if they couldn't move down 4 picks, from number 2, right? I think there would be enough people that like a Nick Bosa, that really like a Quinnen Williams, that you can trade down, and there is no better situation for a team that literally can't cover anybody, already has a quarterback they're paying as an elite quarterback, so you expect him to be an offense that you would expect to be elite. And we've seen this. Coverage and an elite offense has been the recipe for winning the Super Bowl.
I don't think and obviously my memory might fail me here, but I've never remembered a team who failed because they couldn't generate pass rush. I've seen teams predictively, like we talked about Kansas City before the year, I'm like, Justin Houston's great, Dee Ford's great, Chris Jones is great. They're going to struggle because they can't cover. And eventually, a smart team like New England's going to go out there and say, look, I'm going to throw the ball in 2.2 seconds or less. I'm going to take advantage of this. I'm going to mitigate that. And when you try to turn it around and say, I'm going to avoid all the great cover guys out here and force them to rush me, that's not really how it works. And we saw the Rams struggle in that way. So to me, it's like if you have, as George said, a quarterback who's probably going to be elite at some point, what you want to do is you want to give yourself the best opportunity not to crash and burn defensively. And so while I have no issue with taking an edge player top and then four cover guys later, conditional on the fact that you only had that one top pick, I'm going to go with cover guy, 10 times out of 10.
So who are you taking? Have we convinced you?
Best case scenario,
trade down.
Trade down, right? Your general philosophy, don't even take a top 5 pick unless it's a QB. Or a Jalen Ramsey, if you can get that.
If you can get that.
If you feel a corner that you do feel a little bit better about.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you don't have that, trade down. If the Niners are forced to pick, and you trust PFF's evaluations that we think DeAndre Baker, Greedy Williams, and Byron Murphy, forget about scheme fit for a second, we think they're mid-first round picks. That's our evaluation.
Yep.
Do you care? Do you take him at 2? So now it's a mid-first round cornerback projection versus the number 1 overall player.
I think
projection Nick Bosa.
I think the outcome curve is flat enough where that's not an egregious. You take the best player at the most valuable position after that.
And what
you're going to reach.
What you mean by outcome curve is basically that the undulation from pick 5 to 15, right? Where if you say he's top 15, the chances that he's actually top 5, there's enough uncertainty there where he still could be a top 5 guy. But that's about the border that I would get to, right? If he's worse than a top 15 guy, I'm not considering.
Then you're taking Nick Bosa.
Yeah.
All right. That's what the Niners should do.